Now then, it's Burnsy. Welcome to our regular Curiosity podcast, the CuriosityCast. Every episode, we take questions asked by members of the public in Hull and try to get them the best answers from the very, very best brains in the city of Hull. Not all questions, though, are about Hull. They can be about whatever you want to discover. This episode, we've had loads of questions inquiring about Hull City. We're joined by a true expert on City. He's a journalist who's covered Hull City for various publications for over 40 years now. He's written 2 books about the club, Sound of Books, Never Mind the Tigers, which is a quiz book, and The Untold Hull City, which is a book of anecdotes. He's Phil Ascough. Now then, Hull City expert.
Hello, Burnsy. Lovely to see you.
Yeah. Why are they playing him at left back? Sorry, that's not one of the questions. It's just we'll
get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We've got lots of questions, so shall we get into it? Alfie, in HU3, in the city centre. Apart from black and amber, what other colours have City played in?
I think that's a really interesting one. I mean, I can only go back to 1980. Before that, the very first time I saw City, they played in grey because it was on black and white TV on a Sunday afternoon with Keith Macklin commentating.
Keith Macklin, yeah. Yorkshire TV.
Yeah, I think people have to maybe ask the great-granddads about that. But I think, as far as I can remember from what I've seen, it's always been a version of black and amber for the main home kit. Where it gets interesting is with some of the away variations and second and third kits which have come in recent years.
It's how the clubs make money.
It is, yeah.
People love them.
But there were some notorious black and amber designs, weren't there? You remember the proper tiger stripe style and that horrible paisley thing that they came up with. I don't know when that was. Maybe
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some people like the paisley thing.
Oh well, I think they go for a lot of money, as do many old City shirts. People will know Les Motherby, who is a genuine expert on all things Hull City attire, and
you can follow him on Twitter, I think, on Hull City Kits.
Yeah. And when the new shirt came out a week or 2 ago, he was online doing a review of the shirt, and it wasn't just the colour of the shirt or the style of the stripes, but it was all to do with the quality of the material and the fit and all of that. Because, I mean, Les isn't exactly sylph-like, similar to us. And these things matter if you...
Speak for yourself. We're in black and breathing in here on the Curiosity Cast. Seeing the gloves are off now, Mr. Ascough. I mean, I've seen you in a City shirt. I do have a pet theory middle-aged men should not be wearing City shirts, frankly.
Well, mainly because they don't fit me anymore.
Well, yeah.
They're a little bit snug.
Right. What's your favourite?
I wish City's defence was half as tight.
What's your favourite?
I must say I like the traditional black and amber stripe. Now, within that, we have to define traditional, don't we? Because I think there were at least a couple of seasons where it became quite broad. And maybe that was a trend of the time, because I remember the likes of West Brom doing similar. They had much broader stripes than normal, but then other years it's been amber with a pinstripe on it. Yeah, which a little bit fetching. Maybe the pinstripe tells people they're going to do the business, but
Very good.
I can't remember if they did that season. I remember one year, the Gary Alexander year, when he scored a lot of goals. It was just plain amber, wasn't it? Another
You're
year,
telling me I've commentated on a lot of City matches and obviously described the colours.
Yeah.
And I'm never quite sure to say, and here they are in black and amber or amber and black. If you get it the wrong way round, you get an email from somebody.
Yeah.
You do get an email from somebody.
Sometimes it's amber and amber, recent years where they've had amber shirts, amber shorts, which I don't know, it looks a bit lame, that. I think it lacks imagination.
And I'm looking at, we're recording the Curiosity Cast, as we always do, on floor 1 of Hull Central Library. And I'm wondering, we might not be able to answer this, but is there a specific name? I'm going to ask you anyway, and I'm going to throw it out there. We might not get an answer to it. For somebody who studies football kits, would Les be some sort of ologist, a kitologist, or something like that?
I think that definitely needs looking at, because he deserves it. I mean, it's a massive project looking into stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how far back they go with the black and amber. I mean, was there another colour before that? Somebody said that years ago they had blue, and got relegated. And I was worried because when
well, it's not the only time they've been relegated, let's be honest.
Well, there's a bit more to it than wearing blue. But when Phil Parkinson was manager and he got off to a flying start, and then the wheels came off, and I can't remember if they went down that season or nearly did, but blue was their change strip last season. It was a sort of Manchester City style blue, but without the swagger.
Right.
And there was blue. Was blue a third kit last season?
I don't know.
Lots
of colours. Yeah, it was a strange sort of blue.
That was my favourite one. Was the third kit a couple of years ago? The completely black one, the stealth.
That
black.
was ace.
That was fantastic.
It had a very
like Darth Vader City shirt.
You could have maybe got away with that as a man of substance, because black hides a few things.
Yeah, I looked at that, but I took your line there that I'm too old to be buying shirts, even a brilliant one like that. But it had a very faint grey, so it was like, well, a shade of black and a shade of grey, wasn't it? But we won't go down that route.
Or was it shiny and matte, I think, wasn't it? So it looked a bit greyer.
No, they're the two new central defenders coming in.
Well, let's hope somebody's shiny this season. Right then, this coming in from Pete in HU4, which is West Hull. Which player has travelled the furthest to play for Hull City in the 60s that are, maybe come in from Willoughby on the bus, but it's a little different now?
It is. I can't remember where it all started. I know years ago there was a fellow called Viggo Jensen who was from Denmark.
Right.
Which might have been a long way in those days. But more recently, we've had 3 Australians. We had Danny Allsop. We had Richard Garcia. He was from Australia. And there was a tough midfielder years ago, Van Burke or something like that.
Yeah,
he was a proper.
Also, the lad from Celtic who came back, whose name escapes me now, the big tall midfielder that played recently, and used to be at Celtic, and he came back and got married in Social recently, or had his reception.
Did he?
In Social.
I don't remember that one.
Right.
So I've got a bit of a blind spot on that.
We're going well here on the CuriosityCast.
Danny Allsop was a great player, wasn't he? He came in, he scored goals. I think he played at Manchester City earlier in his career. This is becoming a Man City podcast. But he was a great player, and he played alongside Ben Burgess, who wasn't from anywhere exotic.
Giovanni from Brazil.
Giovanni from Brazil, and not as far away, but exotic nonetheless. We had Whitmore and Goodison from Jamaica. Clint Marcel from Trinidad.
I used to live in Trinidad, just for the record.
Did you know his family?
No.
Yeah. No. Actually, I remember we wrote about that, over a long lunch. Yeah. We've had a few Americans, or we had Josie Altidore, who came to us, did okay, went somewhere else, did a lot better. I don't think... Is New Zealand further than Australia? I don't think we've had anybody from there, but somebody might know.
Oh, I think there was. Was it Nagata?
Yeah?
Yeah, was he from... It all blurs into one.
Yeah, see, we're experts, and the thing is... I
wouldn't claim to be an expert.
Well, I wouldn't, but I'm listed as one here, so I'm trying to sound expertish.
We'll move on. Annette in HU5 in the Avenues area. Is it true there was a railway station at Boothbury Park?
It absolutely is, and it might still be there, but obviously not used anymore because Boothbury Park isn't there. But the railway's still there. And I used it a few times. It was great. Just hop on a train in the city centre and have a couple of beers in town, get the train. You'd buy your ticket from what's now W.H. Smith's, the booking hall there, and off you'd go. And it was just the easiest way to get to the match. And I remember when we did the quiz book, we tied in with the Humber Mouth Festival.
Okay, Never Mind the Tigers, the Ultimate Hull City Quiz Book by Phil Ascough. Hold on a minute, I was just spotted this. Forward by Burnsy and Swanee. How did you persuade us to do that?
I think it was a cash plus booze deal.
Was it?
Can I just drop in a steward's inquiry?
You can.
The question was it a station? Was it a station or was it a halt?
Oh,
well, it was known
technical now.
Yeah, well,
it was known as Boothbury Park Halt.
Oh, so it wasn't a station then. It was
not as so. I mean, it didn't have the sort of facilities that you might get at a modern station. But it
apart
was,
from Hull, which doesn't have a pub. on the station, and should do, sadly. But
Well,
you can get a very good bacon butty in the London Way Cafe.
You can. I always
There's
get
some
in early
knowledge.
and do
There's
that.
some knowledge for you on the Curiosity
The
Cast.
pub thing is worth watching because there have been discussions about putting that booking hall to better use than bike storage or whatever it is at the moment, which isn't to decry cyclists.
All right.
But I think most people would rather see a pub in there. I know I would.
Athletes.
And
That's
I-
what
and
we
I-
are. We're
I could
athletes.
sit in there all day waiting for the train to Boothry Park because I know it's not going to come anymore and I can just stay in the pub.
So Boothry Park Halt, was it
Boothry
called?
Park Halt.
Right, okay.
It was a platform. I think it was only one platform because there wasn't a bridge or anything to get from one side to the other. And it was used for away trains coming in, which was particularly handy with some fans if you didn't want them smashing up the city centre. And it was just so easy for people going from here.
And on a match day, roughly, I'm not turning you into Thomas the Tank Engine here on the Curiosity Cast, but roughly how many trains?
I don't know,
Right.
but there were quite long trains, and they got a lot of people on them. And the reason I know that is from the event that we had launching that book. We had a quiz night as part of Humbermouth at Hull Kingston Rovers. And one of the special...
That makes sense, doesn't it? We're
Well, it's
doing a
one
Hull
of
City book.
Yeah.
Let's launch it at Craven Park.
Yeah, maybe somebody misread the title.
Yeah.
But we brought Keith Hackett in,
The referee.
the referee, and all the other thing about Keith is he was involved in the You Are the Ref series of illustrations. Now the illustrations were done by a fellow called Paul Trevelyan, and Keith was the authority on matters of football law. So Paul would come up with a scenario of, this has happened, that's a ball over the line, or is that player offside? And Keith would apply his knowledge of the game to explain the poser that was placed in the cartoons. And I think between them, they launched a board game. So Keith brought the board game along. We raffled it off for charity, and he told us where that had come from. And he spoke about his career as a top referee, because he was top of the game. Mm-hmm. And even in the last 5 or 6 years, he's been head of the referees, including Premier League. And he told me, he said, what happened to the trains at Boothry Park? I said, well, you could say what happened to Boothry Park, but the trains went. He said, my first job as a top linesman was there. He said, I ran out, City were playing Man United, and there was nobody in the stadium. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, nobody wants to come see Hull City against Man United. And then the train pulled in, and minutes later, the stadium was packed. So there are a lot of people on that train. You could ask why we haven't got a halt or even a proper station at the current stadium, but
because
that's
it cost
something.
£1 million or something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I reported on the demise of the previous station, and it was a dispute between the rail operators and the chairman, Don Robinson. And I think at the time, which would have been mid-80s, the difference between what they were after was about £500. I can't understand why it wouldn't be easy where they are now, because railway lines go past it in every direction.
Well, it would be good, sustainable transport, but it ain't happening. Get me with me green credentials there. Where did Hull City play the first match? This is coming in from Greg in HU12, which is out in South Holderness.
Well, it wasn't out there.
Right, true.
Because you wouldn't even get trains out there, would you? Sadly.
Not anymore.
I'm pretty sure that the first match they ever played as a professional club was the Boulevard. But it's another interesting one.
The home of Hull FC.
Yeah, the home of Hull FC, which of course isn't there either. And they're still sharing a stadium with them now. But there was a lot of movement, wasn't there? I mean, they played at the Circle, and there's some interesting stuff going on there with somebody's found the footings for the original terracing. Mm-hmm. And there's talk of doing something with them to create a memorial or some sort of fixture there. Then it was Boothry Park, and then many call it back to the Circle with where they are now, because it's pretty much on that site.
They've squared the Circle. Yeah,
so I think that's Boulevard. So we've had Boulevard, we've had Hull Kingston Rovers, so everybody's getting a mention.
This, by the way, is the Curiosity Cast. I'm Burnsy. And I'll just remind you that you can send us a question. We'll answer it on any subject, preferably maybe about Hull, but you may have bigger questions that you want answered, and we'll try and get an expert for you. and bring it up in a future podcast. Or you can also find content on the Curiosity social feeds. So if you want to message us a question, www.curiosityhull.co.uk, or find Curiosity Hull on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok and YouTube. On this episode, we're talking to Phil Ascough, who's written a couple of books about the Tigers, about Hull City. Never mind the Tigers, the Ultimate Hull City Quiz book, forward by Burnsy and Swanee, I'm getting that in, and a little pamphlet-like book called Untold HCAFC, Tales of Turnstile Trickery, Lucky Chips and Raining Rust. Lucky Chips?
Lucky Chips, some people I know, you knew them as well. We used to go in the 3 Crowns on Anlaby Road, and a couple of them used to nip off 10 minutes before us to get their Lucky Chips from the shop just down the road and munch them on the way to the match.
Right.
Nothing to do with casinos.
Yes. Right. Okay.
And they didn't always work.
No, looking at the history of Hull City, I would perhaps venture that weren't that lucky, the chips.
No, it was very hit and miss. I mean, if they were lucky, we'd have all been on them, wouldn't we?
Well, it's the same thing as favourite underpants to the game and all that.
Yeah, left sock on first and all of that stuff.
Superstitions. Matt in HU9 in East Hull, who's the most famous Hull City fan, do you reckon?
This is an interesting one. It's one of those that will have changed over the years because it is very subjective, isn't it? You know, we can mention celebrities, but people might not know who they are. So
not much of a celebrity then, are they?
Well,
you mean from an age point
of view? If it's one from the past, yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think the most famous I've heard of is Omar Sharif.
Yes.
Actor.
Egyptian actor.
And he was introduced to City by Sir Tom Courtenay.
Right.
Because they were both in Dr. Zhivago together.
Famous Hull actor.
And
if you're listening, if you're the younger generation, Dr. Zhivago is not an NHS drama or anything like that. Okay.
No.
And a football reference, it's not anybody asking to, Doctor, can you sort out me Johnny Giles?
and it's not a new signing from Eastern Europe. But no, I mean, it was a massive film, and they were massive names at the time, and a lot of people will remember them, but younger fans might not. And younger fans might know people now from pop groups or TV shows or whatever that we wouldn't make that City connection with. So, you know, I have to think of the older days. John Alderson.
Please, sir.
Yeah,
the actor from
famous Hull actor. Was he in Upstairs, Downstairs as well? Yeah, big City fan. Roy North, Basil Brush.
Yes.
Another one from the old days.
Mr. Roy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Boom, boom.
He's a
Mr.
lovely
Roy.
bloke, actually. I mean, I've been in the past broadcasting outside City games, and Roy would come up and say hello, and we'd have a chat.
Yeah.
Top man.
There are some pictures out there of Zenith with Billy Whitehurst.
There's a night out.
Yeah.
There is a night out. What did you do last night, Phil? I went out with Sunita and Billy Whitehurst.
Yeah.
That is a night out. Billy Whitehurst, in case you don't know, legendary centre forward, supposedly, or maybe there's no supposedly about it, used to play for City, the hardest man in football. Lovely bloke.
Yeah.
Lovely bloke.
He's in that book, and I've referred to him.
Which book? The Untold HCAFC?
No, the City quiz book, never mind the Tigers.
Right.
There might be a section in there about hard men.
Right.
And I said in there, the rumour cannot be easily dismissed that he once punched a horse.
Blimey. He did play for Newcastle. They've got form up there.
He went to Newcastle from us, I think.
Yes.
But
Sunita.
An interesting one is Bertie Ahern, who was the Irish Premier.
Yes.
Or Taoiseach, as they call him over there. He became a City fan because as a lad he supported Dundalk. And they had a goalkeeper called Maurice Swan. And when Maurice Swan was transferred to City, he thought, right, City are my English club.
Right.
And he's in the book as well. And I exchanged letters with him when I was doing the book to get that confirmation from him. But my favourite, because of where it leads, is Alan Plater.
Playwright.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Now, he was a massive City fan, and if you want, if there's time, I can read a little poem that he wrote, which featured...
We'll do poetry on the CuriosityCast.
It's called Hymn of Faith, and it was from The Tigers Are Coming OK, which was on at Hull Arts Centre, 1972. I think that was the original Hull truck, wasn't it?
Okay, I'll shut up.
So here we go. And this is how it goes. We'll pull the plug from Hornsey Mere when the Tigers win the cup. We'll fill St Andrew's Dock with beer when the Tigers win the cup. We will booze all through the night. We will paint the Guildhall white and find a little man to fight when the Tigers win the cup. We'll sink pints until we're dropping when the Tigers win the cup. And we're going to marry Mary Poppins when the Tigers win the cup. Lots of dirty songs we'll sing, listen to the church bells ring, and Waggy will be crowned the king when the Tigers win the cup. We'll get paralytic drunk when the Tigers win the cup, and from our street we'll do a bunk when the Tigers win the cup. There before us, shining stand, angel choir and silver band, play us to our happy land when the Tigers win the cup. There is a happy land, far away, far away, far away.
Nice work, beautifully delivered.
I can't remember how I found that, but it was in researching those books there, and I just thought, what a little touch of genius.
Should be better known, that, I think. It's a cracking.
It should,
nice.
yeah.
That's lovely. Jackson Irvine, by the way, is the Australian player I was thinking of,
that's the
who
one.
recently had his wedding reception in Social down Humber Street.
He had a bit about him.
Yeah, he was a good player. This coming in from Harry on Holderness Road. When did Hull City first appear on the television?
I can't remember much of the detail, but it was something like 1990, and it was one of those weird competitions, the Zenith Data Systems Cup.
Right.
And it was against
They must have been on the
Middlesbrough.
telly before. You mean a proper live match?
A proper live game, yeah.
All right, a full game on the telly.
I mean, did anybody see a game in the Zenith Data Systems Cup? I was around here then, I was watching them then, but that one passed me by. Actually, I was working abroad then. I didn't go abroad just to miss the Zenith Data Systems Cup. But it was, we haven't got the equivalent of that now, have we?
Well, probably. There is all sorts of obscure football tournaments out there.
There's a very good book, and this is somebody else's book I'll recommend, not least because he was a great help for me with my books. There's something called A Century of City by Mike Peterson, and it's got the lineups, the scorers from as far back as you can go. Now, sadly, Mike died a couple of years ago, but he was a lovely fella, and he was a real authority on all of the City stats. I mean, if I can tell the story about how I found out he died, I was standing up. You know, every year they do the memoriam on the big screen. Mm-hmm. People connected to the club who've passed in the previous year, and I was standing there and I saw the name Trevor Bugg. And I was gutted because Trevor's a mate of mine, and note the use of is in there. And he helped with these publications as well, and he used to help with the stats at the Press Association. And I was gutted because I had no idea he'd died. And then I was gobsmacked a few days later when he rang me up. He said, "I'm all right."
I was going to say, I know Trevor. He's still with us, isn't he?
Well, he said, "You may have seen something concerning on the screen, but I'm all right. I'm not dead. I'm not even ill." And what he'd done, he'd logged Mike Peterson's passing to go in that display, and somebody messed up and killed Trevor instead.
Oh,
so I'm pleased for Trevor and very, very sad for Mike. And I would recommend that book to anybody who's mad about City, because you'll find all sorts of wonderful little talking points in there that will have you curious for more. You'll be looking up all sorts of stuff online after that.
We've got about 5 minutes left.
We've got about 5 minutes.
On the CuriosityCast with Phil Ascough. Have City ever played on Christmas Day, says Claire, in HU6?
They have. I mean, years ago, and I think we're going back to the 50s and before, teams regularly played on Christmas Day.
And Boxing Day.
And Boxing Day. They'd go all over the country. The thing that sticks with me from this is that one year City played Millwall at home one day and away the next, or the other way around. So one day, that either Boxing Day or Christmas Day, they'd be at Millwall away, and the other day Millwall were coming here, which seems insane. You know, you've got people moaning now about having to do a 5 o'clock kickoff on Boxing Day. Well, it used to be a lot worse than that, which isn't to say that what's happening now is right. But just imagine if you're a die-hard fan and you want to do both of those games. I'd imagine getting a bit of grief at home.
Well, somebody must have done it. There'll be people out there who've done Christmas and Boxing Day games. And you know,
let's say it was the 50s, that there might be people there who know about it, whose dad went, granddad, whatever. It would certainly be a talking point.
Has Hull City Stadium been used for other sports, says Bev, not on Beverley Road, unfortunately. HU14 in the West Hull Villages.
Well, the obvious one there is rugby league.
Yeah.
Because they've shared the stadium since day one. I believe, Asa Milan put squash on at the stadium, didn't it? We had the big glass boxes on the pitch.
Cricket?
Cricket. Lashings, the festival 2020 team or whatever they are from the West Indies. They played. I think they played a 2020 there. Be a few years ago now. I'm not aware it's been used for more than that. But Boothry Park was. If you look up the history, I think might be in that book actually. I think there was show jumping at Boothry Park, but that was knocked on the head because it didn't do the pitch a lot of good.
Kept destroying the goalpost.
Yeah.
If they jumped over them, I'd be very impressed.
I mean, Boothry Park was known as having the best pitch in the country, but I don't think that was in the show jumping days. So show jumping, I think, was a short-lived activity. There was baseball.
What's that?
Yeah, and basketball. Or I think that must have been. It was the Harlem Globetrotters. That must have been in the gym.
Yes.
And the
they
gym,
still come to Hull. They play the arena, don't they?
They do, yeah.
Harlem Globetrotters. Yeah. So let us go to the last question on this episode, because we've got a minute. Have Hull City ever played in Europe, says Alex in South Cave? I think we know the answer to this.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one where there was some funny tournaments years ago that pitched City against teams they would never normally have faced. So the Anglo-Scottish Cup, I can't remember who they played in that, but you know, it would be the only way that they would play teams outside of the English League. There was also the Anglo-Italian Cup, which I don't remember the details of that. But I think if you're looking at getting into Europe on merit, and it came the season after the FA Cup final.
2014.
Yeah, 2014 was the Cup final 10 years ago. We were looking at that European campaign, because by finishing runners-up and Arsenal already having qualified for Europe through their league position, City got into something called the UEFA Europa League, which is still going. And they went in the early rounds. I think it was the third qualifying round. They played a team called Trencin from Slovakia, and they got through that. And then they played Lokeren from Belgium, and they lost that one over the two legs. I think it might have been an away goals thing or something like that.
And I interviewed Steve Bruce recently, the manager, and he said he does regret, and I can remember being as I am saying at the time, he's not picked a strong enough side here, and he does regret not picking a stronger side and going more in Europe, because it was a one-off experience, and he acknowledges now he needed a stronger side. I'm sure I put it to him after the game as they went out of Europe.
Yeah, I don't know if they underestimated Lokeren or they placed just excessive importance on the following week, which was Stoke City.
Premier League.
And I think they lost the Stoke game anyway.
Well,
but you don't know you're going to do that, do you? You've got to pick the team you think's right. And I remember thinking they could have done a bit more in Europe that year.
There you go. Hull City in Europe. Phil Ascough has been our guest on the CuriosityCast. Phil, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Burns. It's always a pleasure.
For this episode of the CuriosityCast, our thanks to Phil Ascough for being our guest. Remember, you can ask questions and seek answers on the Curiosity website, www.curiosityhull.co.uk, or follow and friend us on the socials, where we are Curiosity Hull on all the main feeds and platforms. I just threw platforms in there because we talked about trains earlier. We'll be back very soon with more quality answers to whatever question you'd like to ask.